My mother-in-law set 7 places at the birthday table. 8 of us had walked through the door. The missing chair belonged to my 7-year-old daughter. Before the roast was even carved, Helen had taken Lily's plate, walked it to the laundry room, and left it on the dryer like an unwanted package. Then, in front of everyone, she put both hands on my child's shoulders and pushed her toward the front door as if she were a draft to be shut out. The room went silent. But what silenced them wasn't my husband's voice. It was the 2 papers I laid on the table first. Welcome to Tranquil Drama Stories, where we explore the quiet turning points families try to bury. I'm Emma, 34 years old, a bookkeeper by trade. For 3 years, I'd kept the peace in this family. Not anymore. Drop a comment. Be sure to subscribe. My husband David and I live in a little yellow house in Linden with a kitchen that never quite loses its chill. Our 7-year-old Lily covers the refrigerator door with drawings taped edge to edge, so you have to peel one back just to grab the milk. David is a furniture maker, a calm man with sawdust settled permanently in his cuffs. I married him 3 years ago, when Lily was 4 and still called every stranger sir. His older kids, Owen and Chloe, stay with us on weekends and for half the summer. Owen is 12, all elbows and opinions. Chloe 10, watchful and quick. I love that house when it's full and nobody is keeping score. But someone always was. I'm a bookkeeper. I notice when things don't add up. And in this family, the math had been off from the beginning. David's parents, Helen and Frank Morrison, live 20 minutes away in a big farmhouse in Briar Hollow. The Morrison name runs 5 generations deep on that land. To Helen, blood isn't sentiment, it's the only deed that can't be foreclosed. From our first dinner, she referred to Lily as Emma's girl, never our granddaughter. Owen and Chloe got the good chairs, the second helpings. The proud talk about the Morrison nose. Lily got told to be careful on the stairs. The Christmas before last, I watched Helen hand out gifts. A stack of board games and sweaters for Owen and Chloe, and 1 small box for Lily, the kind that holds a single pair of socks. I spoke up. Helen smiled thinly and said, "Children shouldn't be spoiled." Frank just studied his coffee, and I saw in his eyes that he recognized the unfairness but wouldn't cross his wife. That farmhouse fridge is bare metal. It holds Owen's school photo and Chloe's science fair ribbon, but not one of Lily's drawings. Every visit, Lily brought a fresh picture and pressed it into Helen's hands. I'd later find it in the recycling bin, smoothed flat, as if Helen couldn't quite throw it out but couldn't keep it either. I'd retrieve the drawing, smooth it myself, and add it to a folder in my desk. That folder grew thick. Lily felt the chill, though she didn't have the word for it. One day she tugged my sleeve and asked, "Mommy, am I a grandkid too?" I knelt on that polished floor and told her yes, she was somebody's whole world, and the people who couldn't see it were missing out. She nodded, wanting to believe me. I had long tried to excuse Helen. She came from people who measured worth in acres and surnames. But understanding didn't erase the damage. So I kept the peace, telling myself a child couldn't feel a temperature she wasn't taught to name. That was my mistake. The cost of that peace was invisible to everyone but me. Because, quietly, I was keeping the lights on in Briar Hollow. 2 years ago, Frank's cardiologist put him on medication that cost nearly $500 a month after insurance. Then the farmhouse roof caved in over the winter's $6,000 to replace. More than they had. Frank's pension covered only the basics. So I started helping. First the prescriptions, then groceries when the medicine swallowed the grocery money, then the roof paid in installments. David knew, but Helen assumed the money came from him. I never corrected her. Correcting her would have meant a conversation, and conversations in that family came with their own emotional bill. So I set up the transfers and logged every dollar, because logging things is what I do when my chest gets tight. I kept those records not as ammunition but because numbers don't lie. A column of figures doesn't care whose nose you have, it just adds up. Month after month, the total grew into a quiet, heavy thing I carried without looking at directly. I could have told you the figure to the dollar at any moment. I just never said it aloud. There's a kind of giving that curdles when you keep it secret too long. It stops being generosity and starts being evidence. I didn't know that yet. I was about to learn it at a birthday party. David's spring birthday felt like the right time to share news we'd been holding close. The previous year, he'd come home from work, sat on the edge of Lily's bed while she slept, and watched her for a long while. Then, he found me in the kitchen and said he wanted to make it real, not stepfather, but father, on paper. The kind that can't be argued at a dinner table. We hired a family attorney. Lily's biological father had surrendered his rights years before, so the process moved without a fight. 6 weeks before the birthday, we drove to the courthouse in our good clothes. A judge with reading glasses asked David if he understood that adoption made Lily his child in every legal sense. His heir. His responsibility forever. No different from Owen and Chloe. David said yes before the judge finished. Lily got to bang the little gavel. We have a photo of her mid-swing, mouth wide open, David's hand steadying her wrist. Her last name became Morrison. Like the nose. Like the stubbornness. Like everything. We hadn't told the family. We were saving it. The way you save the best news for the moment it lands kindest. We pictured Helen's face, softening. Finally, the legal paper doing what 3 years of casseroles could not. I kept the decree in a manila envelope, flat and official, and brought it to the party folded in my bag. But I also brought something else, a second folder I'd printed the night before, telling myself it was for tax season. 3 years of transfers. Dated. Categorized. Summed. Medication. Roof. Groceries. Property taxes. I didn't plan to use it. But you don't bring your books to a birthday party unless some part of you already knows the party is about to become an audit. Helen announced she'd host the dinner herself, which was unusual. She wanted it in Briar Hollow, her table, her rules. David's sister Patricia, recently divorced and living back home, would manage the details. Patricia orbits Helen like a moon that's forgotten its own light. I offered to cook and bring the cake, but Patricia said in that bright, closed-door voice that they wanted to keep it family this year. Let family handle family things. I let it go. But I ordered the cake anyway, because Lily had asked for white frosting with strawberries, and I wrote out the names for the baker to pipe on top. David, Emma, Lily, Owen, Chloe, Helen, Frank, and Patricia. 8 names across that cake. 8, I thought it was a full number, the number of a family that had grown. I remember tracing the names with my finger when I picked it up from the bakery, imagining Helen's reaction when she realized all 8 belonged. On the phone, Patricia asked if we'd need a kids' table, then answered herself. Probably the children can sort themselves out. I should have heard the trap then. We drove out on a gray Saturday. The cake belted into the middle seat like a third child. Lily wore a green dress she'd chosen and clutched a rolled-up drawing. A surprise for David. Owen and Chloe rode with us, arguing about a video game in the easy way of kids who feel safe. David hummed, and I watched the fields pass, feeling almost hopeful. Today we'd tell them. Helen met us at the door with a hug for David, nods for Owen and Chloe, and a there she is for Lily that didn't reach her eyes. The house smelled of pot roast and lemon polish. The dining room was set with good china and cloth napkins. I did what I always do in a new room. I counted. 7 chairs, 7 plates, 7 napkins folded into little tents. I counted again, because the first count is never the one I trust. 7. Patricia drifted over, not meeting my eye. We're a little tight on space this year, she said, arranging water glasses. Before dinner, the neighbors, the Callahans, dropped off a birthday card. Helen lit up, placing a hand on Owen's shoulder and one on Chloe's. These are the grandchildren, she said. Owen's going to play ball in high school. Can you believe his size? They made polite noises. Lily stood a few feet away, holding her drawing, waiting to be introduced. She wasn't. The Callahans left without learning her name. Lily tugged my sleeve and asked the question she'd been circling. Mommy, am I a grandkid too? I knelt and repeated my promise. Behind me, I heard Helen in the kitchen, not lowering her voice. This table is for Morrison blood. Lily heard it. She didn't cry. She just got very still. Like me. David missed all of that. He was out on the porch with Frank and a neighbor, talking gutters and ball games. When he came in, Lily ran to him and unrolled her surprise. "Happy birthday, Daddy." The drawing showed 5 figures holding hands in front of our yellow house, labeled in careful first-grade letters. Mommy, Daddy, me, Owen, Chloe. Everyone had an enormous grin. David knelt, studied it, and his jaw tightened. "This is the best present I've ever gotten," he said. Helen glanced over and her mouth tightened. "That's a sweet picture, dear," she said in the voice you'd use for a stranger's child. Then briskly, "All right, dinner's getting cold." Dinner was called. The choreography clicked into place. Owen and Chloe took assigned seats. David was waved to the head, and Patricia put a hand on Lily's back, steering her toward the den. "Come on, sweetie, you get the special spot cartoons and a tray." I stepped forward, but before I could reach them, Helen intercepted, taking Lily's shoulder. "The children who belong at this table will sit at it," she said, pleasant as anything. "Lily can eat in the den. It's nicer for her." That word again, nicer. The room quieted. Owen stopped mid-sentence. Chloe looked down at her plate. Frank set his fork on the cloth. I heard my voice come out level and cold. "She's staying at this table." Helen turned, and the pleasantness hardened. "Emma, let the real children sit with their father tonight. It's his birthday." She kept her hand on Lily, guiding her toward the door. "Lily can have her supper in the den. There's no shame in it. She's just not." Helen paused and chose the cruelest possible honesty. "She's not his. Not really. Everyone here knows it. I won't pretend at my own table." Then, as if to seal the point, she pushed Lily. Not a bruising shove, but a push that said, "You are a thing I can move." A push toward the front door and the cold porch beyond. Lily stumbled, her hand catching the doorframe. The drawing David had been holding slipped from under his arm and fell to the floor between them, all 5 of us holding hands, face up on the hardwood. The room went utterly silent. I saw in Lily's eyes the same look she'd had when she found her drawings in the recycling bin. Chloe's eyes filled. Owen stood so fast his chair scraped. Frank half rose and sat back down. Lily looked at the drawing, then up at me, not crying yet, just waiting. I crossed the room. That was Helen's second mistake. The first was thinking a 7-year-old was the easiest person to move. The second was believing I'd kept 3 years of records for nothing. I knelt, picked up the drawing first, smoothing it the way I smooth all important papers. Then I lifted Lily onto my hip, she's really too big for it now, and set her down behind me where the door couldn't reach her. I straightened to my full height between my daughter and her grandmother. I didn't shout. I spoke slowly, so every person caught each word. "Don't you ever put your hands on my child again." Helen blinked. "I'm her grandmother," I cut her off. "You're going to want to think very carefully about the next thing you say." Patricia had backed against the sideboard. Owen came to stand near us, his young face furious. David appeared in the kitchen doorway, frosting on his thumb, birthday candles still in their box. He set the cake plate down very, very carefully, the way you do when your hands start to shake. "What happened?" he asked. Flat. Owen's voice cracked. "Grandma pushed her." She pushed Lily into the door. Chloe nodded fast. David looked at his children, at the crumpled drawing on the floor, and something in his face settled, not rage, but a quiet, final calculation. He walked around the table and stood beside me in front of Lily. "Tell me exactly what my mother just did." Helen should have read the room, but she dug in. "Oh, don't you start, David. Somebody has to be honest. That child is not yours. You took on Emma's daughter, fine, but don't ask the rest of us to rewrite the bloodline because you have a soft heart." Her voice climbed. "Your real children, Owen and Chloe, are Morrisons. They'll have this house, this land. I won't sit here and watch you hand it to a stranger's kid playing dress up at my table." The word stranger hit David like a slap. Patricia echoed. "Blood is blood." David spoke quietly. "I did decide." He took a breath, and then I knew it was time. I reached into my bag. The room watched my hand like a magician's. I pulled out the manila envelope first. No slamming, no speech. I just walked to the empty place where Lily's chair should have been and began in my bookkeeper's voice. "Helen, for 3 years I've sat at your table and listened to you decide who counts. I let it go because David asked me to. Because I thought you'd come around. I'm not keeping the peace anymore. Love isn't blood, it's who shows up. Let me show you who's been showing up. I slid out the first paper, the adoption decree with the county seal and the judge's signature, and laid it face up. 6 weeks ago, in a courtroom, David adopted Lily. It's final. Her legal name is Lily Morrison. She is his daughter, equal to Owen and Chloe. That makes her your granddaughter and his heir, with the same claim to this house and land you just promised to the others. The color drained from Helen's face. You can't, we did, I said. A judge signed it. Owen broke into a grin. So Lily's really our sister? For real? She's always been your sister, David said. Now the law agrees. Chloe took Lily's hand. Lily stared at the paper with her name on it, and the crease in her small face began to ease. If you've ever been the one quietly holding a family together while others take the credit, you'll know why I didn't put that folder away. It wasn't revenge, it was proof. Proof that love isn't blood. It's who shows up. Comment I see it, if you're still with me. The second paper was about to change everything, but I wasn't finished. That's only the first paper, I said. I pulled out the folder and opened it to the summary page, categories down the left, totals across the bottom. You said this table is for Morrison blood. Let's talk about who's been keeping that blood fed. I touched the first line. Frank's heart medication, every month for 2 years, roughly $500, because his pension doesn't cover it. The roof that caved $6,000, paid in installments. Groceries when the medication ate the grocery money. The water heater, the property taxes, twice. I turned the page so she could see the running total, underlined twice. Just under $40,000. Not $1 of this came from David's wages. It came from me, the bookkeeper, the stranger's kid's mother. I've been paying to keep this house warm the whole time you've been deciding my daughter doesn't belong in it. The silence was absolute. Patricia's mouth hung open. Frank, gray-faced, looked at his wife and finally spoke the words he'd swallowed for years. Helen, it's all true. I've been taking money from her for 3 years. She paid for my heart pills while you pretended she didn't exist. He'd known. Of course he'd known. He'd watched his prescriptions get filled and his roof get fixed by money his wife refused to see. And he'd stayed quiet. Now he said it too late to be brave. Just in time to be honest. Helen snatched the napkin from her lap and threw it on the table, her voice cracking into something raw. How dare you? You think a checkbook makes that child blood? Get that paper off my table. This is my house, and I will decide who sits at this table. She was on her feet, shaking. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not raising my voice, Helen. I don't need to. The numbers already did. I rested my hand on the folder. And I didn't bring money into this, you did. The day you decided some children eat at the table and some eat by the door. I just wrote down what it cost. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. David set Lily's drawing on the table between the decree and the ledger, smoothed it flat, and stepped forward. You pushed my daughter out the door, he said, quiet and final. My daughter. I stood in a courtroom and swore to be her father for the rest of my life. Tonight, you put your hands on her and shoved her toward the cold. So here's what happens now. We're going to walk out of that door together, all 5 of us. The family in this drawing. And the money stops tonight. Every dollar that kept this house warm came from the woman you just humiliated, and the child you just called a stranger. If Lily isn't family, mother, then neither is the money. You don't get to feed off this family and spit on half of it at the same time. Helen went white, not pale, but the white of someone watching the ground open. Frank put a hand over his eyes. Patricia sat down hard in the chair she'd guarded so carefully. Helen reached a hand toward David, and for the first time in his life, he didn't take it. Happy birthday to me, he said, almost gently. I'm spending it with my family. He picked up the drawing and the decree, handed me the folder, and lifted Lily into his arms. We didn't storm out. We gathered our things quietly, the room watching. I caught a glimpse of the cake on the sideboard, the 8 names now a silent rebuke. Owen stood up from the table and looked at his grandmother. She's our sister. If Lily can't sit here, I don't want to either. He walked over and took Lily's hand. Chloe followed without a word. The two real grandchildren had voted with their feet, and Helen's bloodline had picked the stranger's kid. We walked out that front door, the same door Helen had tried to push Lily through an hour earlier, into the sharp, clean air. Behind us, no one spoke. Patricia didn't follow. Frank remained seated, his last small failure of the evening. Helen stood at the head of her perfect table with her perfect china and her 7-place settings, watching the family she'd sorted into real and not real walk out as one unsorted whole. Halfway home, down the dark county road, Lily finally spoke from her car seat. "Did I do something wrong?" David answered before I could. His eyes on the road, voice rough. "No, sweetheart. You did everything right just by being you." I watched in the rearview mirror as her small face relaxed, and I knew we'd made the right choice, even if it meant walking away from everything else. She fell asleep before the highway, the way kids do after holding it together too long. The transfers stopped that week. I closed the recurring payments. But I'm not cruel. Frank's heart is still bad, and I won't punish an old man's arteries for his wife's pride. So I set up a direct line to the pharmacy, covering only his essential medication, paid straight to them. Nothing that passes through Helen's hands. It comes with a condition in writing. Because I write everything down, the day she's willing to call Lily her granddaughter and mean it, we'll talk about the rest. Until then, the den door stays open only from our side. Frank called once, alone, and apologized in a cracked voice. Helen hasn't called. Patricia hasn't either. The hallway in Briar Hollow still has its wall of grandchildren, and Lily's photo will never hang there. That's their loss to live with now, not my daughter's. Our refrigerator in Linden is still covered edge to edge with her drawings. Last week, she added a new one taped right over the handle. 5 figures holding hands in front of a yellow house. She labeled it the same as always: Mommy, Daddy, me, Owen, Chloe, and she signed it at the bottom: Lily Morrison. Blood decides who you're related to, but showing up decides who your family is. I've learned to keep very good records of exactly who shows up. If someone in your life keeps score of who's real, show them who shows up instead. Please like this video, subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories, and drop a comment below. We'll keep the door open. We'll keep the books. We'll see you next time.